morning, it's Falmina. I'm super sick and let's talk Dragon Age anyway. I woke up to this amazing question from Joyride on a Space Rock and I started to answer it. My answer got very long and I was like, let me make a video. I am, as I mentioned, sick, so I'm going to be reading from a script, not memorized. Just bear with me, please. So anyway, Joyride on Space Rock asks, the thing that bothers me is that Elgar'nan, who thinks everyone is beneath him, genuinely seems to love his brilliant sister, and Ghilan'nain is purported to have originally been mortal, elevated to Evanuris. Have I missed something? Does anyone else find this confusing? So glad you asked. Great questions. Let's start with Ghilan'nain. Side note, I am planning a really deep dive lore video on Ghilan'nain exclusively. If you have further questions about her, please drop those questions in the chat. I will incorporate them into my video. Also, I'm going to say there is a longer answer to the question of like Ghilan'nain becoming elevated to Evanuris status. I'm not going to answer that here. I'll give you the short answer. So yeah, first, she wasn't ever mortal in the same sense as people in present-day Thedas or you and I, because none of the ancient elves were. They were all immortal. The Evanuris didn't hold a monopoly on that. The difference was that they used blood magic to link their life force to dragons, right? So that meant the average elf or Evanuris wouldn't die of natural causes, but they could be killed. But for an Evanuris, you had to kill the dragon first, right? So that was what made them different. The veil is what brought mortality to the elves, and killing archdemons during blights left the imprisoned Evanuris susceptible to dying of natural causes, which is why only Elgar'nan and Ghilan'nain remain. As for Elgar'nan and Ghilan'nain's relationship, I think the following things are true. 1. Interpersonal relationships in Elvenon were more complex in some ways than the ones we can relate to. 2, they are chosen siblings, not actual siblings. 3, his feelings seem genuine. 4, he needed her more than she needed him. 5, the Evanuris as a whole are a cautionary tale against codependency. So, the short answer to all of this is that Elgar'nan needed Ghilan'nain to control the Blight. We see at the end of Veilguard that he is able to use it as well to control others, but in a much more crude way compared to her. I suspect this is probably because she was open to it changing her physiology and he was resistant to it. So this is probably why he encouraged her to do all of her experimentation with it in the first place. You know, she was someone who was willing to pay that price that many others wouldn't. The longer answer here is that I question how genuine Elgar'nan's feelings were. I hypothesize, this is going to go on a slight tangent here, stay with me, but I hypothesize that both Elgar'nan and Mythal were originally spirits of justice, which is why they can't quit each other. He became vengeance through some event that we are not privy to, perhaps involving those across the sea. Anyway, I mention this because I think a sense of justice drives all of his feelings. And I think that his love is always codependent and inseparable from need, which is why then Mythal established the same dynamic with Solus, who then, yeah, you get it. Anyway, this type of attachment can explain why it became such an us versus them dynamic in ancient Elvenon. It was like whatever changed him warped his thinking so that anyone disagreeing with him was an other who deserved to be punished. So, back to Ghilan'nain. You're going to hear my dog in the background. She wants to be picked up. She's fine. Anyway, you're fine. You're okay. So yeah, Ghilan'nain and Elgar'nan have been the last Evanuris since Junet died. His archdemon was killed at the end of Dragon Age Origins, and then 400 years prior to that is when Andruil, Ghilan'nain's lover, died. So I imagine in those 400 years, the bond between the three of them, Elgar'nan, Ghilan'nain, Junet, became stronger than ever. I also think that the sense of justice and vengeance that Elgar'nan felt witnessing his sister go through that particular loss is what connects him to her so deeply when we see them together in Veilguard. And I think he strategically suggested Urthemiel as the next archdemon to wake after Andoril, who was Andrul's dragon, because he would rather lose Juné over her, Ghilan'nain. There is an additional piece that we have less evidence for because of what was cut from Veilguard, but we do know from one memory and a codex entry that Ghilan'nain and Solis were once close. Close enough that he could change her mind on things. So another aspect of why Elgar'nan needs Ghilan'nain is because he knows Solis is out there, and Solis is the #1 target of all of his vengeance. Ghilan'nain is basically his ace up his sleeve now that he doesn't have access to Mythal anymore. So yeah, I hope I answered your question. The last thing I'll say is it is confusing because codependent dynamics are confusing. And they are also super common, which is why I think this story and setting resonates with so many people. So thanks for watching. Again, if you have questions about Ghilan'nain, please drop them in the chat. I'm going to answer them. I am at the tail end of this sickness, I hope. And yeah, maybe we'll see that next week. Okay, bye.